54% of American households have nothing in any retirement account. Not a 401k, not an IRA, not a single dollar. And of the 46% who do have something, only 9.3% have $500,000 or more. The median retirement savings balance for Americans in their 50s, the ones who actually showed up and saved something, is $460,000. Fidelity says you need 10 times your final salary by 65. For someone earning $95,000 a year, that is $950,000. They are $500,000 short, and those are the optimistic people. The financial industry's solution to this problem is to tell you to start earlier, which is about as useful at 51 as a doctor telling you the best time to quit smoking was in 1994. Thank you. Noted. So here is the actual question. Is there a specific window in which the math can still genuinely rescue the retirement outcome, or is it just a slow glide toward whatever you end up with? And if the window exists, when exactly does it close? There is a window. It peaks at 51. And the reason is not one thing. It is 3 colliding timelines that most retirement calculators are not designed to show you. Today, I'm going to walk through all 3 with real numbers, real data, and the specific decisions that either save the trajectory or permanently narrow it. This is not going to tell you it is never too late. The math has opinions about that. The metaphor I keep returning to is a rocket launch window, not for dramatic effect, because it is structurally accurate. When NASA sends a probe to another planet, the launch window is a calculation trajectory, velocity, gravitational alignment. Miss the window by 2 weeks and your options are: burn dramatically more fuel trying to catch up, wait years for the next alignment, or arrive somewhere very different than planned. The window does not wait. The physics do not negotiate. Your retirement has 3 clocks running simultaneously. I call them the contribution clock, the compounding clock, and the exit clock. Most retirement advice only discusses the first 2. The exit clock is the one that changes everything. And understanding how all 3 interact is the reason 51 matters, not 53, not 55. 51 is the last year in which all 3 clocks are still working in your favor at once. The launch window is still open. For now, in a few minutes, I am going to show you data from the Urban Institute that will make you rethink every retirement timeline you have ever put on a spreadsheet. But first, let me show you what the contribution clock actually unlocks, because most people over 50 are walking past a significant tax advantage every single year. The 401k base contribution limit for 2026 is $24,500. The day you turn 50, the IRS adds what they call a catch-up contribution, an extra $8,000 per year on top of that base. Your 401k ceiling becomes $32,500. Your IRA separately goes from $7,500 to $8,600 with an $1,100 catch-up provision. Combine them, $41,100 per year you can move into tax-advantaged accounts. Versus $32,000 for someone 1 year younger than you, the difference is $9,100 per year. That is not the interesting number. The interesting number is what $9,100 per year produces over 14 years from age 51 to 65 at a conservative 7% annual return. That math produces roughly $205,000 in additional retirement wealth, purely from the catch-up differential. $205,000 that does not exist in your retirement outcome if you started this at 53 instead of 51. Let me tell you about a man I will call Daniel. Solid middle manager at a regional construction firm. 20 years of diligent, consistent 401k contributions. Never missed a paycheck deduction. At 57, he sits down with a financial advisor for the first time in his life, not because something went wrong, but because his salary had finally reached a level where paying for the conversation felt justified. The advisor asks if Daniel has been taking advantage of catch-up contributions. Daniel looks at him the way people look at someone who just switched languages mid-sentence. He had been contributing to the base limit for 7 consecutive years past 50. 7 years of missing the $8,000 annual addition. The advisor's estimate, Daniel left approximately $88,000 of compounding wealth on the table. The catch-up provision was in his enrollment materials, page 27 of a 38-page document formatted in the same font as the section on hardship withdrawal procedures. His HR department had never mentioned it. His plan administrator had never sent a reminder. The reason is not complicated. There's no incentive in the system for the intermediary to prompt you to contribute more. The system is designed to allow you to maximize if you happen to know to ask. There is a difference between those two things, and it is a difference that costs people like Daniel close to 6 figures. Here's where it gets more interesting. The Secure 2.0 Act, taking full effect this year, added a super catch-up provision for people ages 60 to 63 specifically. Instead of the standard $8,000 catch-up, they get $11,250. 401k ceiling for those 4 years, $35,750. Add the IRA. Total, $44,350 per year for 4 years, built right into the tax code. But here is the exit clock problem embedded in the super catch-up. It only matters if you still have a job at 60, if you still have income to fund it, if the company that employs you still exists in a form that employs you. It is a generous provision on paper and largely theoretical for the portion of people who will need it most. And I will explain why in about 60 seconds. The launch window is still open. The contribution clock is running in your favor right now, but the exit clock is on a schedule you do not control, and most retirement calculators do not even include it. Stay with me. What I am about to show you from the Urban Institute changes the logic of every retirement timeline you have ever put together. Here is the reversal this whole video is built around. You think the problem is that you are not saving enough. That is the problem your retirement calculator is designed to see. The actual problem, the one the calculator is not programmed to show you, is that the plan assumes you control the timeline. And for the majority of American workers over 50, the data says that assumption is empirically wrong. The Urban Institute tracked full-time workers in their early 50s who had been with the same employer for at least 5 years. Not the precarious workers, not people with spotty employment histories. The most tenured, stable, structurally embedded workers in the American labor force. About half of them experienced an employer-related involuntary job separation after 50 layoffs, restructuring, acquisitions, business closures, about half. And the Georgetown Center for Retirement Initiatives noted that the likelihood of an older worker experiencing an employer-related job loss increased sharply with age after 51. The curve does not flatten. It steepens. What happened financially to the people who were displaced? Only 1 in 10 who lost jobs involuntarily ever returned to the same income level. Median household income for these families collapsed 42%, from $93,710 to $54,810. That is not a bad quarter. That is a structural collapse of the savings capacity that the retirement plan assumed would run undisturbed for another decade. And if you're thinking this only happens to people without college degrees, without career capital, the Urban Institute found that 55% of college-educated workers in their early 50s experienced an involuntary job separation. Education did not significantly protect them. The curve was almost identical, 58%. That is the share of Americans who retire earlier than planned, according to EBRI, the Employee Benefit Research Institute. The median expected retirement age is 65. The median actual retirement age is 62. A Gallup survey from April of this year puts the actual average retirement age at 61. The gap between what people expect and what happens has persisted for more than 2 decades across every survey that has ever asked. It is not a wave of irresponsible behavior. It is a structural feature of the labor market for older workers, driven primarily by health events and employer-side decisions, and it is entirely absent from the standard retirement savings calculator. 38% of those who retired earlier than planned cited health problems or disability as the primary driver. 23% cited employment disruptions. 20% cited caregiving demands. 21% said they chose it because they could afford it. 79% of early retirements were not a free choice. This is why 51 is the inflection point. At 51, you are statistically still in the early phase of that risk curve. The probability that the exit clock fires before you expect is real, but not yet dominant. By 55, based on the Urban Institute data, a meaningful share of workers who started the decade in stable employment have already experienced at least one disruption. By 60, the majority have. You can build a retirement plan on the assumption that you will work to 65 and the math will look clean. Or you can build a plan around the statistical probability that you might not and engineer a buffer that still produces a decent outcome either way. One of those plans has a name. The other one is just optimism formatted as a spreadsheet. Let me introduce you to Marcus. Marcus was a vice president at a manufacturing company in Ohio, 52 years old. $480,000 saved, good salary, 2 kids in their final years of college. His plan, very deliberate, internally logical, was to wait until both tuition payments ended, roughly 24 months away, and then execute what he called the 2-year sprint. Maximum 401k, maximum IRA, aggressive debt paydown. The company had been profitable for 11 consecutive years. Marcus felt secure, and looking at any single year of his situation, the plan made complete sense. He would come back to it. We will come back to Marcus. By the way, hit subscribe if you like the content. Otherwise, YouTube's algorithm may never show you these videos again, and you will end up watching someone explain why a stock priced at 14 cents is technically undervalued. Here is the part that never makes it into a standard retirement calculator. Knowing what these statistics mean and actually building a financial system around them are 2 entirely different things. I spent years surrounded by accountants and fiscal lawyers who explained to me how money actually moves the interaction between early exit probability, tax drag, withdrawal sequencing, and long-term compounding. And the thing I kept running into is how consistently the standard advice fails people in their early 50s. Not because the advice is wrong, because it is designed for a frictionless world where you work until 65 and the portfolio grows undisturbed the entire time. I built something called the Exit Code. It is a digital book, 8 chapters of research, built on 50 years of actual retirement data, no filler. 2 elements connect directly to what we have been discussing. The first is what I call the 58% rule, a framework for calculating the specific financial buffer you need to survive a forced exit before 65, the buffer that keeps your Social Security strategy intact even when the exit clock fires ahead of schedule. The second is the dynamic withdrawal method, which replaces the standard 4% rule with a sequence of returns-aware framework that accounts for the worst-case scenario most people refuse to plan for, that the market takes a significant hit in the first 2 or 3 years after an unplanned early retirement. The 4% rule was not designed for that. The dynamic withdrawal method is, the exit code is available through the link in the description for less than the cost of dinner for 2. It is not a course, not a community, not a 30-day challenge. It is the math assembled with the context the financial industry consistently buries on page 27. Now, I want to show you something about the compounding clock specifically, because the cost curve of delay at this age is not linear. And once you see it, the numbers become impossible to ignore. At 7% annual return, the conventional long-run assumption for a diversified equity portfolio money doubles approximately every 10 years. This is the rule of 72. Divide 72 by your expected return rate, and you get the doubling time. 7%, 10.3 years. Here's what that means at 51. $1 you invest today grows to approximately $2.58 by 65. $1 you invest at 55 grows to approximately $1.97 by 65. 61 cents of difference sounds small, but now apply it to the full contribution scenario. $41,100 per year from 51 to 65. At 7%, roughly $927,000. Start the same annual contributions at 55 and run them to 65 10 years instead of 14, roughly $568,000. The 4-year delay costs approximately $359,000. Not because you made fewer total contributions across those years, though you did. Because the contributions you made at 51, 52, 53, and 54 had more time inside the part of the compounding curve where the growth is exponential, not linear. Here is a reframe that makes this number land differently. Most people spend more time researching a car purchase, test drives, comparisons, financing arrangements than calculating the actual cost of delaying retirement contributions by 4 years. The car costs, on average, somewhere around $48,000. The 4-year delay costs $359,000. The car depreciates and gets replaced. The portfolio gap follows you to the end of your life. The psychology of the delay is not a mystery. At 51, you are often living at the peak of your lifestyle consumption. Income is the highest it has ever been. The house is nearly what you want it to be. The kids are finishing college. The life looks like a reward, which it is. And the idea of redirecting a large portion of that income into retirement accounts feels like a voluntary downgrade from a position of comfort rather than a strategic deployment of capital at the most productive moment in your financial life. This is the most common version of a brain problem dressed up as a circumstance problem. The money is often there. The psychological permission to move it is what is missing. The only known solution to a psychology problem in finance is to make the decision once, automate the contribution, and then make it structurally difficult to revisit. The worst thing that happens if you automate $41,000 per year into retirement accounts is a temporarily constrained lifestyle. The worst thing that happens if you do not is the math we just ran through. Marcus, by the way, at 53, heard that his company had its first unprofitable quarter in 12 years. He noted it. He did not change his timeline. The compounding clock does not wait for profitable quarters. I want to get to the Social Security section because there is a single financial decision that most Americans make on autopilot without realizing it is a decision at all that either adds or subtracts $250,000 to $500,000 from their lifetime retirement income. And the lever that controls that decision is activated or deactivated by what you do with your contributions at 51. The maximum Social Security monthly benefit for someone who claims at 62 in 2026 is $2,969. The maximum for someone who waits until 70 is $5,181 per the Social Security Administration directly. The monthly difference at maximum benefit, $2,212 every month for the rest of your life. Claiming at 62 instead of 70 at the maximum benefit level locks in a 43.5% reduction in your monthly check permanently. The mechanism is called delayed retirement credits. For every year you wait past your full retirement age, which is 67, for anyone born in 1960 or later, your benefit grows by 8%, contractually, risk-free, not subject to market volatility, not dependent on portfolio performance. 8% per year from the federal government until you hit 70. In a world where 10-year Treasury bonds are yielding around 4%, a guaranteed 8% annual increase in income is not just good. It is the most reliable return available to any American retiree, and almost no one talks about it in those terms. Every financial advisor who charges you 1% of assets per year to manage your portfolio is simultaneously sitting above a government guarantee paying 8% that you cannot even access through them. But the 70 strategy only exists as an option if you can afford to fund 8 years of living expenses without touching Social Security. That requires a bridge fund, a specific pool of money separate from your long-term growth portfolio that covers your living expenses from the day you retire to the day you claim. And you cannot build a bridge fund in a compressed timeline unless the contributions compounded long enough before you needed to draw them. This is the direct chain. Contributions at 51 compound for 14 years into a meaningful portfolio at 65. The meaningful portfolio provides the bridge fund. The bridge fund allows you to wait until 70 for Social Security. Waiting until 70 gives you a monthly check that is 74% higher for the rest of your life. Break the chain at 51 by delaying contributions, and everything downstream shifts by degrees. Smaller portfolio, smaller or non-existent bridge fund, earlier Social Security claim, permanently lower monthly income. 25% of new Social Security beneficiaries in 2024 claimed at 62, the earliest possible age, the lowest possible benefit. Most of them did not choose 62 because it was the optimal strategy. They chose it because there was no bridge and 62 was the only option available. Marcus claimed at 62. At 54, his company announced a restructuring. His division was consolidated. His role was eliminated. He moved to a competitor at 30% lower compensation and assumed he would rebuild. At 58, the competitor was acquired. His position was eliminated again. Over 6 years, his contributions had been inconsistent. He had drawn down a portion of savings to cover household expenses during 2 income gaps. He arrived at 62 with $320,000, not nothing, but not a bridge fund. Not enough to fund 8 years of unclaimed Social Security. He filed at 62. His monthly benefit was set permanently at the reduced rate. His retirement is not a disaster. He has income, he has housing, he is managing. But it is a retirement built around constraints that never needed to exist, shaped by a plan that assumed control he did not have, executed on a timeline the exit clock overrode twice. At 52, Marcus's launch window was still open. He thought the sprint could wait 2 more years. The exit clock disagreed. The financial industry, for what it is worth, would like you to know that Marcus's situation is evidence that he should have started earlier, which is true and completely useless. A quick note on the fee piece, because it connects to the compounding clock in a way that deserves at least one sentence. A 1% annual advisory fee on a $500,000 portfolio is $5,000 per year. That does not sound catastrophic, but a 1% fee difference compounds against your returns every single year. Over a 20-year period on a $500,000 portfolio at 7% growth, the fee drag gap is over $330,000 in foregone wealth per research aggregated by financial planning firms in 2026. Every dollar that leaves your portfolio in fees is a dollar that never compounds again. The math is identical to the delay math, just pointed in a different direction. Let me put real numbers on the full picture. Marcus 51, $180,000 saved below the median for his cohort, but not unusual for someone who had children early and spent his 40s on tuition payments and a mortgage. He earns $95,000 a year. He has been contributing 8% of salary, around $7,600 per year. Starting this month, he decides to max out. He captures his employer's 4% match, redirects household spending, and hits the full $41,100 annual ceiling. Over 14 years, from 51 to 65 at 7%. His existing $180,000 grows to approximately $464,000 from compounding alone. His annual contributions produce approximately $927,000, total at 65, roughly $1.4 million. At a 4% withdrawal rate, $55,600 per year from savings, about $4,660 per month from the portfolio. Mark then uses a portion of this to fund a Social Security bridge. He lives on portfolio withdrawals while letting his Social Security benefit grow at 8% per year through age 70. His monthly Social Security check at 70, based on a median career income, will be significantly higher than at 62. His total retirement monthly income, somewhere between $5,000 and $7,000, depending on his specific earnings history and how long he lives. Now run the same scenario with Mark, starting contributions at 55 instead of 51. Everything identical, same income, same 7% return, same starting balance. But 10 years of contributions instead of 14. Contributions produce $568,000 instead of $927,000. Total at 65, roughly $960,000. 4% withdrawal, $38,400 per year. He might manage a partial bridge, he might not. The Social Security timing decision becomes constrained rather than strategic. His monthly income in retirement is materially lower. For the same person, making the same decisions just 4 years later, the 4-year gap is worth $440,000 in total portfolio value for someone who earned $95,000 a year and was reasonably responsible with money. Not extraordinary, not exceptional, just 4 years earlier. There is an alternative. You could spend the next 4 years watching a trader on social media who has a 93% win rate and a private Discord group that costs $300 a month to access. The testimonials are very compelling. Let me come back to the opening. Most Americans are behind their retirement benchmarks. Most Americans will retire earlier than they planned. Most of the financial advice designed to help them is calibrated for a scenario: smooth employment to 65, consistent compounding, controlled timeline that the data says is a minority outcome. The plan that assumes you will choose your exit date is not a retirement plan. It is an optimistic spreadsheet. 3 things you can do this week. Not this year, this week. First, log into your 401k portal tonight and find your current contribution rate. Calculate the gap between where you are and the $32,500 maximum. If you cannot close it immediately, raise your rate by 2 or 3% and set a calendar reminder for 90 days to raise it again. The worst outcome is you arrive at the maximum over several months instead of one pay cycle. The cost of not doing this compounds at 7% per year against you. Second, calculate your involuntary exit number. This is not a retirement savings goal. It is a buffer number, the specific portfolio balance that allows you to survive a 2 to 3 year income disruption starting at 55 or 58 without claiming Social Security early, without liquidating long-term holdings during a market downturn, and without permanently restructuring your retirement income. If you do not have this number written down, you are running Marcus's plan. It looks like a plan. The exit clock sees it differently. Third, log into ssa.gov and pull your Social Security statement. Find the projected monthly benefit at 62, at your full retirement age, and at 70, write those 3 numbers down and calculate the monthly difference between 62 and 70. That difference, multiplied by 12 months and by a conservative estimate of how many years past 70 you expect to live, is the lifetime income value of the bridge strategy. That is the number your 51-year-old contributions are specifically designed to fund. If the number is large enough, and it usually is, the bridge strategy is not a nice to have. It is the highest returning financial decision available to you. Marcus told me once what he would have done differently. Not in a regretful way, just factually. He said he would have treated 52 as the last year the window was fully open. He would not have waited for the perfect financial moment to start the sprint. He would have started it and trusted the math to do the rest. The math was available to him at 52. So was the window. Lazy investing built more fortune than crypto memes. And the financial industry will keep putting the catch-up provision on page 27 of a 38-page document, not by accident.